Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome to our first Stanley Cup Finals Rematch episode of NHL 21. So if you guys have been following me for a while, you have known that I've been doing these since NHL 18. Basically, I do rematches of Stanley Cup Finals from the past and to see if they have a similar or different outcome. I recreate both teams' rosters and their jerseys, their arenas, for the most authentic experience that I can. And if you guys haven't seen any of the other rematches I've done previously, there's like 14 other years that I've already done, so you guys could go check those out. I'll probably put like an eye in the corner so you could take a look at those videos as well. But however, let's get into today's episode, which you can tell by the thumbnail and the title is the 2011 Stanley Cup Finals rematch between the Vancouver Canucks and the Boston Bruins. It's kind of crazy that this finals was actually almost 10 years ago already, because I remember my first year of high school, which was 2010-11, and instead of paying attention in science class, I was actually writing down like box scores to the 2011 playoffs, and I remember that so vividly because I actually had like my book taken away by a teacher, and it was kind of annoying. But yeah, anyways, so now for a little context on how this final came to be and how both teams got to this point. So Boston finished the regular season with a 46-25-11 record, which was the 7th best in the NHL. They finished with 5th in goals for and 2nd in goals against, so they were a bit better of a defensive team than offensive. They also had the 20th best power play in the NHL and the 16th best penalty kill, so their special teams weren't great, but I think they end up getting better with the playoffs. So then en route to the finals, they took out 23-year-old Carey Price in 7 games in round 1. Then they followed it up with a sweep of the higher-seeded Philadelphia Flyers, and then they took out Tampa Bay in a hard-fought 7-game series in the conference finals to get to that Stanley Cup Finals. As for Vancouver, they won the President's Trophy with 117 points, finished 54-19-9. They also finished first in goals for and goals against, so their offense was really good apparently, even though from what I've seen, it doesn't look that fabulous. And then their goals against was really good because obviously they had like Roberto Luongo as their goaltender. Their special teams were also really good, as they had the 1st best power play and the 3rd best penalty kill, so they were nearly 1st in every single category, which is pretty crazy. Now in the playoffs, the Canucks would take out the defending Cup champion Chicago Blackhawks in 7 games in round 1, which was a pretty big upset, even though Chicago was technically the 8th seed and the Canucks were the 1st seed, just because Chicago had that experience from the year before. Then they would also take out Nashville in 6 games in round 2, and finally take out the San Jose Sharks in 5 games of the conference finals to get themselves to the Cup Finals for the first time since 1994. Now for the finals between these two teams, the Canucks would take the first 2 home games in very close games, 1-0 and 3-2 in overtime. Then the Bruins would answer back in Game 3 and Game 4 with a huge 8-1 win and a 4-0 shutout win in Game 4. And then the Canucks would answer back again with a Game 5 win and a way better defensive effort, winning 1-0. However, like the previous 2 games in Boston, the Canucks would get rocked defensively, losing 5-2 in Game 6 to force an all-important Game 7 back in Vancouver. And in Game 7, the Canucks would trail 1-0 after the first period before allowing 2 goals in the second, one of those shorthand goals being by Patrice Bergeron, and then the late goal by Brad Marchand in the third sealed the deal, as the Bruins would shut out the Canucks in Game 7 4-0 and win their first cup since 1972. So it was a pretty long time coming between Stanley Cup wins. Now that you have a little bit of history of how each team got to the finals and also a little bit about the finals, let's get into the jerseys for both teams, starting off with the Vancouver Canucks. Okay, here we are with the jerseys for the Vancouver Canucks. So as you can see, they're pretty much similar to what they have now, except for it has the old logo with the Vancouver on it. They got rid of that I think a few years ago, but yeah, that's basically what they looked like back in those days, just in case anybody wasn't alive, but I'm assuming most of you would be alive at this point, but still, just want to give you guys a little bit of a history lesson, I guess, to an extent. And then here is the away jersey, which is just reversed. I could have technically just used the actual NHL teams, but I like creating the teams instead because it kind of gives a little bit of a design component to this like kind of series, so that's why I recreated them instead of using the already ones that EA has. So there you go, those are the jerseys for the Canucks. Now here are the jerseys for the Boston Bruins, which are pretty much the same thing as what they have now. I think the only thing that really changed is the font, because I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, Adidas changed their font for the Bruins a little bit on their new jerseys, but like it literally looks pretty much the exact same as what they have currently. And here's the other one. It looks a little bit weird with that yellow part on the top, but it's the best I could do in the creation suite. Once again, I could have used the already pre-made jerseys, but I like to create my own jerseys as well. One thing I actually forgot to show you guys is I also try and replicate the arenas as well. So this is what the TD Garden looks like as best to my ability. So yeah, it looks pretty cool. I also should show you guys what what is it called? the Rogers Arena. Yeah, I think it's Rogers Arena or Rogers Center or Rogers Place. It's one of the three of those. I think it's Rogers Place, right? I wrote it down in here. Actually, I went back to Boston, god damn it. So, yeah, we'll go back to Vancouver. I think it's Rogers Place. Because General Motors Place before, right? No, it's Rogers Arena. There's way too much Rogers places, but anyways, this is my best to my ability for the Rogers Arena. Looks pretty decent, I would say. So there you go. So now that you guys have seen the jerseys and arenas for both teams, let's get into the rosters for both teams, starting off with the President's Trophy winning Vancouver Canucks. Okay, before we get into these rosters, I briefly want to mention that these lines are the exact same from Game 7, and so some players won't be in the lineup due to injuries that they suffered in this series and previous series. So these lines are just based solely on Game 7. So starting off with the first line left winger, we have Chris Higgins, who actually came over from the Florida Panthers this season in a trade that said Evan Oberg in a third-round pick that eventually went back to Vancouver at some point and became Cole Castles. So basically in exchange straight up for Evan Oberg, which is kind of weird. Anyways, Higgins had 5 points in 14 games with the Canucks during the regular season, and in the playoffs he had 4 goals and 4 assists for 8 points in 25 games. He also played with Montreal, the Rangers, Calgary, and Florida in his 12-year career that ended in 2015-16. It's kind of weird that his career ended that long ago, because like it literally feels like he didn't play that long ago, but he did. Then at center here we have Ryan Kesler, who most of you guys should probably know. Kesler spent 10 seasons with the Canucks and 5 years with the Anaheim Ducks. During this 2010-11 season, Kesler had 41 goals, 32 assists for 73 points, which was third best on the team in points. This was his second best NHL season, as the season before this in 2009-10 he was a tad bit better with 75 points in 82 games, but I believe he had way less goals. He was also excellent in his playoff run with 7 goals, 12 assists for 19 points in 25 games. Now at the right wing here we have the Dane, that being 24-year-old Jannik Hansen. Hansen spent 9.5 years with the Canucks in his final 1.5 years of his NHL career with the San Jose Sharks in 2017-18. In 82 games this 2010-11 season, Hansen had 9 goals and 20 assists for 29 points. In the playoffs he would have 3 goals and 6 assists for 9 points in 25 games. Also during the playoff run he was actually a little bit more aggressive than he regularly was during the regular season. In 25 playoff games he had 18 penalty minutes, while in 82 regular season games he had 32 penalty minutes. So he would have taken a lot more penalty minutes in the playoffs if it was a full 82 game playoffs for some reason. Now we get into the second line here. We have on the left wing one of the twins, that being Daniel Sedin. Daniel led the team actually in points in the regular season with 41 goals and 63 assists for 104 points, which was the best year of his 17-year career. In 25 playoff games he put up 9 goals and 11 assists for 20 points, which would finish him second behind his brother. Daniel would win the Pearson, which is now the Ted Lindsay Award, and the Art Ross this season. And in that center we got his brother Henrik Sedin, who finished second behind Daniel in terms of the team's points during the regular season. In 82 games he had 19 goals and 75 assists for 94 points, which was his second best NHL season. The year previously in 2009-10 he had 112 points in 82 games, and then during the playoffs, as I was saying, he led the Canucks in points, just above his brother with 3 goals, 19 assists for 22 points in 25 games. So one year Henrik Sedin led the NHL in points, and then the next year Daniel led the NHL in points, which is pretty cool to see that. You don't really see two brothers, nonetheless twins, put up that much points in back-to-back years, so pretty cool on that front. Then on right wing here we have left winger Alexander Burrows, who's now the assistant coach of the Montreal Canadiens. Burrows spent 11.5 years with the Canucks before he would play his last 1.5 years with the Ottawa Senators. Burrows was a player that kind of played on the edge a bit and was a very instigator-like player. In 913 career games, he had 1,134 penalty minutes, but he also had a solid 205 goals and 204 assists for 409 points. Not to mention he was also a career plus 104, but maybe that's because of the fact that he was in the box a lot of the time. This playoff run, he had 25 games with 9 goals, 8 assists for 17 points. He also had 34 penalty minutes and 2 game-winning goals, one of which was an OT winner in Game 2 of this series, and the other one sent the Blackhawks packing back in Game 7 of the first round. Now on the third line left wing here, we have another player that played on the edge, that being Raffi Torres, who was in his second Stanley Cup Finals appearance, as he had previously been there in 2006 with the Edmonton Oilers. Torres was originally a 5th overall pick of the Islanders back in 2000, so he's one of those bad picks that the Islanders made back in those days. In 80 games, Torres had 14 goals, 15 assists for 29 points, and also had 78 penalty minutes. Postseason, he played 23 games with 3 goals, 4 assists for 7 points, and also 28 penalty minutes. Rafi is best known for his 41-game suspension, as he was a repeat offender for some pretty bad hits, including one to Marian Hossa. The only reason I'm mentioning that is just because Tom Wilson should have got a big suspension, but never did, so I thought I would bring that up. At center here, we have Maxime Lapierre, who spent time with 3 different teams this 2010-11 season. He originally started in Montreal before being dealt to Anaheim, and then dealt to 2 months later to the Vancouver Canucks with I think it was for McGregor Sharp and a 3rd round pick, and that 3rd round pick actually went on to be Frederik Andersen, which is pretty crazy. So yeah, the Canucks could have had Frederik Andersen, not that they probably would have drafted him necessarily, since they had Luongo and whatnot, but it's still kind of a crazy what if scenario. In 19 regular season games as a Canuck, Lapierre had 1 goal, and he was only a -1, so he was actually a pretty good defensive, grindy bottom 6 player. And then in the playoffs, he played all 25 games with 3 goals, 2 assists for 5 points. He also had a whopping 66 penalty minutes, so he was pretty physical those playoffs. He had the only goal in Game 5, which gave the Canucks a 3-2 series lead before they would end up dropping the next 2 games. Then at right wing here, we have Jeff Tambellini, who is one of the sons of former Oilers general manager Steve Tambellini, the other one being Adam Tambellini, and I believe he was like in the AHL recently, if I'm not mistaken. But Jeff had a relatively short NHL career that only lasted 242 games, which saw him play in the NHL to the age of only 26, and then he went overseas, I believe, to Switzerland or so. This season with the Canucks, he played 62 games with 9 goals, 8 assists for 17 points. He was also a +10 and had 18 penalty minutes. These playoffs, he only dressed in 6 games and he had no points, and he was a -3 and had 2 penalty minutes. He also played in Los Angeles for the first 4 games of his NHL career before playing with the Islanders for the next 4.5 years. This 2010-11 season was his final season of his NHL career, as he would leave for Switzerland, as I was just mentioning. Now onto the 4th line left wing here, we have another physical player, that being Tanner Glass, who spent his 11-year career with Florida, Vancouver, Winnipeg, Pittsburgh, the Rangers, and Calgary. In 73 games this year, he had 3 goals, 7 assists for 10 points. He was also -5 and had 72 penalty minutes, so he's almost a penalty minute game technically on average. During this postseason, he continued to be more of a physical player, playing 20 games with no points and 18 penalty minutes. He was a former 9th round pick of the Panthers back in 2003. Then at center here, we have one of the best face-off maestros of all time, that being Manny Malhotra. Manny was in his first season with the Canucks, signing with them in the 2010 offseason from San Jose, where he actually was only with San Jose for like 1 year. Manny also played with the Rangers, the Stars, the Blue Jackets, the Sharks, the Hurricanes, and Canadiens before he would retire. Since the NHL started keeping face-off stats in 2007-08, Manny would have a career face-off win percentage of 59.7%, which is really incredible. It's one of the best of all time, I would say, from 2007-08 onwards, with guys like Zenon Konopka and whatnot. As doing so, the Canucks would bring him in purposely to win a defensive zone face-off on the penalty kill on multiple occasions. During the regular season, Manny had 30 points in 72 games. However, due to a late season injury, he wasn't able to actually play in any playoff games up till the Cup final, where he only dressed in 6 of the 7 games, so he was injured for a good chunk of the year. So the final 10 games of the season, and then a first 3 rounds of the playoffs pretty much. And to wrap up the dress forwards, we have Victor Oreskovich, who only played 67 career NHL games with 9 points and 41 penalty minutes. During this postseason, he played in 19 games where he had no points, and he was also -6 and had 12 penalty minutes. He would retire in 2012 and return to university, where he actually got a Master's of Business Administration degree and joined the RBC, which is the Royal Bank of Canada, which is kind of crazy. Like, I actually found his LinkedIn, which is a little weird. Victor was originally a 2nd round pick of the Avalanche in 2004, just a bit before Bruins for David Krejci, which is kind of crazy. Now into the defensive core, we start off with Alexander Edler, who most of you should know since he's still with the Canucks after all these years. Edler has been with the Canucks since 2006-07, and he's actually closing in on 1,000 career games with them, which is pretty awesome to see. In 2010-11, the 24-year-old had 8 goals and 25 assists for 33 points. He also stepped it up a lot in the postseason, putting up 2 goals and 9 assists for 11 points in 25 games. Now onto his defensive partner, that being Hockey Night in Canada's own Kevin Bieksa, who had a pretty good career like Kessler between Vancouver and Anaheim. Bieksa was originally a 5th round pick of the Canucks in 2001, and in 808 career games, Kevin had 278 points, was a +2, and also had 1,124 penalty minutes. This 2010-11 season, Kevin Kevin had 22 points in 66 games, but he was a plus 32, so he was very good defensively, and he also had 73 penalty minutes. In the postseason, he had 5 goals and 5 assists for 10 points in 25 games. Then on to the second pairing here, we have German defender Christian Ehrhoff, who was in his second and final season with the Vancouver Canucks, as he would be dealt twice in the offseason to the Islanders and then to the Sabres. This was statistically Ehrhoff's best year of his career, with 14 goals, 36 assists for 50 points in 79 games. He also put up 2 goals and 10 assists in the 23 games in the playoffs. The main problem for him this postseason, though, was he was a minus 13 and he was a minus 7 just in the series alone. So that's kind of what was one of the downfalls, is he was not able to play good defensively against a tough Bruins team. It's mostly probably because of that 8-1 loss, I would assume, but not 100% sure with that. Ehrhoff also played in San Jose, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, LA, and Chicago. He would never actually play a game with the Islanders, who he's traded to, because he was literally traded like a couple weeks later, I think, or maybe even the same day, because I think I remember actually like watching like Sportsnet during those days and remember him getting traded like multiple times or something. Next, we got his defensive partner, that being longtime Vancouver Canucks Sammy Salo, who played 566 of his 878 game career as a Canuck. Salo actually missed the majority of the 2010-11 regular season, as he tore his Achilles tendon in the offseason playing floorball, which is pretty tough. That's a very tough injury to come back from, I'm pretty sure. He would play 27 games with 7 points, and then he would also lace up in 21 of 25 playoff games with 5 points. This was Sammy's second and last season in Vancouver before he would sign in Tampa for the last 2 years of his career. He also was originally a 9th round pick of the Ottawa Senators back in 1996 and played with them for his first 4 years of his NHL career. Now into the top 6 pairing here, we have former Boston Bruin Andrew Alberts, who had a short 459 game career. Alberts played 3 years in Boston before briefly playing in Philadelphia and Carolina, and in Vancouver for his final 134 NHL games. Andrew was a big physical defenseman, coming in at 6'5", 206 pounds. In 42 regular season games this year, he had 113 hits and 49 block shots, so he's just more of a defensive defenseman for sure. And then Andrew also scored 1 of his 8 career goals this season, so he only had 8 goals within that 459 game career. And in his playoffs, he had no points and was a -8 in 9 games, so he was not doing his part defensively in the playoffs or getting caught a lot against big time players. And then finally, to wrap up the dress skaters, we have Chris Tanev, who was in his first NHL season. You should know him now because he's in Calgary. He played in 29 regular season games with 1 assist over that span, and then for the playoffs he played in 5 games with no points, but he was a respectable even 0 in plus minus. So he's just more of a rock of a defensive defenseman to an extent at some points in his early career, and then he also, I think, blocked a lot of shots, so that was also very helpful for the Canucks. Now onto the goaltenders, we have Roberto Luongo, who was in his 5th year with the Canucks. Luongo and his backup Corey Schneider would win the William M. Jennings this year for the fewest goals allowed. Luongo went 38, 15, and 7 with a 2.11 goals against average and a 928 save percentage and 4 shutouts, so he was very good this year. Luongo was acquired in June of 2006 from Florida with former defenseman Lucas Krejcik in a 6th round pick for a 6th round pick, Todd Bertuzzi, Brian Allen, and Alex Auld. That was one of the biggest trades I remember from my childhood, alongside like the Joe Thornton trade and the Marian Hossa trade that sent Hossa from Ottawa to Atlanta. Next up, we got his backup, and that being 24-year-old Corey Schneider, who was in his first full season with the club, but also played a little bit in 2008-09 and 2009-10. Corey was brilliant as Luongo's backup this year, going 16-4-2 with a 2.23 goals against average and a 929 save percentage with 1 shutout. Corey would spend 2 more years after that with the Canucks before being dealt to the Devils at the 2013 NHL draft for a 1st round pick that eventually became Bo Horvat. Now we get into the depth options, some of which were actually regularly dressed, but some got injured or suspended and missed this all-important Game 7. So starting off, we have defenseman Aaron Rome, who is mainly a career depth defenseman, playing 226 career NHL games split between Anaheim, Columbus, Vancouver, and Dallas. He actually got a Stanley Cup ring for only playing 1 playoff game for the 2007 Anaheim Ducks. I don't think he got his name on the cup though, if I'm not mistaken. So Rome was actually suspended for the final 4 games of this playoff series, as he knocked out Nathan Horton and injured him pretty bad, and that was actually one of those first injuries that kind of derailed Nathan Horton's career to an extent. It was a pretty bad hit nonetheless. These 2011 playoffs, Rome had 14 games with 1 goal and 37 penalty minutes, so yeah, he was just more of a guy that was hitting everything and playing defensively. Next up, we have Cody Hodgson, who was in his first NHL season, but only played in 8 regular season games in 12 playoff games. His rookie season was technically the 2011-12 NHL season, because I remember actually him getting Young Guns cards in 2011-12. But kind of a cool story, I actually met him back in the 2012 NHL All-Star Fanfare, and it was funny because my mom had to make the joke that my name was Cody as well, so it was just kind of a weird thing. But yeah, it was kind of cool to meet him. And then I also met Gabriel Landeskog and Jeremy Roenick that same day. But anyways, that's a little bit besides the point. But Hodgson had a short career that ended mainly due to his injuries, but he was a solid player, I would say. 142 points in 328 games for the former 10th overall pick. If he didn't have those injury problems, he might have had a better career, I would say. He could have had one that was actually respectable for a 10th overall pick. And unfortunately, he was traded actually to the Buffalo Sabres. I think it was actually in that 2011-12 season, if I'm not mistaken. It was in his first year in the NHL. He was traded for Zach Kassian, and that might have killed his career as well, because every player that goes to Buffalo, it kind of derails their career a bit. So maybe that was the case with Cody Hodgson. Next up, we have Alexander Beauduc, who was mostly an AHL player, and he only played 65 career NHL games with 5 points in 44 penalty minutes. During the 2010-11 playoffs, he played in 3 games with no points, and he was originally a 4th round pick of the St. Louis Blues actually back in 2003, but he never actually played with them. He would have segments of 3 seasons in Vancouver and 3 seasons in Phoenix. Next up, we have Mikael Samuelsson, who battled injuries this playoff run. As doing so, he only played in 11 of 25 playoff games this year. Samuelsson was a Cup winner in 2008 with the Detroit Red Wings. He also played in San Jose with New York Rangers, with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Florida Panthers, and then Detroit on 2 different stints actually, which is kind of neat. In 699 career games, Mikael had 149 goals, 197 assists for 346 points. He was also a career plus 50 and had 370 penalty minutes. This 2010-11 season was his second best statistically with 50 points, but the year prior he had 53. Next up here, we have the 25-year-old Mason Raymond, who played 70 games with the Canucks this season with 15 goals and 24 assists for 39 points. Unfortunately for Mason and the Canucks, he was injured in Game 6 by Johnny Boychuk, which saw him miss Game 7. In 24 playoff games, Mason had 2 goals and 6 assists for 8 points. Raymond also played with Toronto, Calgary, and Anaheim, and in his 546 game career, he had 251 points respectively. So pretty decent, underrated player, I would say. And if I remember correctly, he was a very fast skater too. Next, we have Dan Hamhuis, who was in his first year as a Canuck after spending the previous 6 seasons in Nashville. Hamhuis was injured in Game 1 of the series after trying to deliver a hit to forward Milan Lucic. Running into Milan Lucic, you're going to definitely hurt yourself. Hamhuis was a huge defensive piece though to the Canucks, as he was a plus 29 in the regular season and a plus 5 in the playoffs with 6 points in 19 games. This was a huge blow to their defensive core, just like Raymond and Samuelsson were. If those 3 guys would have stayed healthy, maybe the Canucks could have won the Cup. Who knows? That's always a what-if scenario. Hamhuis spent 8 years as a Nashville Predator, 6 as a Canuck, in 2 years in Dallas. He actually retired just at the end of last season in 2019-20 with the Nashville Predators, because he was with them in 2 different stints. And finally, to wrap up the Canucks, we have defenseman Keith Ballard, who dropped off completely in production with the Canucks. As doing so, he fell down in the depth chart behind guys like Kirstanev and Aaron Rome. Keith's prior seasons in Phoenix and Florida, he averaged just under 30 points per season, but these 3 seasons in Vancouver from 2010-11 to 2012-13, he averaged just over 5 points a season, so he was nowhere near the same player he was before. And Ballard was actually an originally 11th overall pick of the Buffalo Sabres back in 2002, but he would never play a game for them. Okay, so now that you guys have seen the Canucks, it's time to get on to the Cup champion Boston Bruins. Okay, so starting off here on the left wing here, we have the big guy you all should probably know, and that is Milan Lucic. This was Milan's 4th NHL season and his best ever in his NHL career. In 79 games, he had 30 goals, 32 assists for 62 points. He was also a plus 28 and had 121 penalty minutes, so he's pretty much doing everything for this team, and he was a very good goal scorer in this part of his career. Milan also had a solid 5 goals and 7 assists for 12 points in 25 games to get Boston that Stanley Cup win. He was also a plus 11 and had 63 penalty minutes, so once again in the postseason, he was doing everything that he did during the regular season, and that helped a lot in terms of winning a Stanley Cup for the Boston Bruins. Being from Vancouver himself and actually playing for the Vancouver Giants made him a big enemy of the Vancouver Canuck fans. Next at center here, we have another guy that you also know because he continues to actually play in Boston, and that is David Krejci, who was in his 5th season in the NHL. In 75 regular season games, games, he had 13 goals and 49 assists for 62 points. He was also plus 23 and had 28 penalty minutes. Krejci was originally drafted second round in 2004 from the Gatineau Olympique. As I was mentioning when I was talking about Victor Oreskovic, he went a little bit after Victor Oreskovic, so that's kind of interesting. He actually had a very good playoffs this year as well, though 12 goals and 23 points, what actually led the team. He was also a plus 8 and had 10 penalty minutes, and this would be actually his second best playoffs of his career, as in 2013 when they would go to the finals against the Blackhawks, he would put up 26 points in 22 games. So Krejci's a very good playoff player by the sounds of it, and definitely from what I've seen at least of the Bruins when they played like the Sens and stuff like that, David Krejci's a really good player in the playoffs. Next at the right wing here we have another center, and that is Rich Peverley, who had a short career that ended back in 2013-14 when he was a member of the Dallas Stars. He retired having a cardiac issue in game. A lot of you could probably remember that, I would assume, but like I don't feel like it was that long ago, but it was back in 2013-14 when the Dallas Stars changed their jerseys over to the ones that they currently have, so that's kind of crazy that it was that long ago already. Rich was an undrafted forward who was actually signed by the Nashville Predators as a 24-year-old back in 2007. Eventually Atlanta would claim him on waivers, and then he was dealt to Boston in the Blake Wheeler deal of this 2010-11 season, so it was a pretty actually good fleecing by the Atlanta Thrashers to an extent, but actually did help out Boston too, because Atlanta claiming him on waivers, right? And then eventually, I think it was 2 seasons later, they eventually trade him and they get Blake Wheeler, who's been still killing it on the Jets for all these years. But Rich Peverley helped this team get to a Stanley Cup win, so that's something that Blake Wheeler doesn't have yet, but still kind of an interesting scenario there. Eventually, after the Blake Wheeler deal, he was then dealt to Dallas in the Tyler Seguin deal back in 2013, so he was part of 2 pretty big trades in Boston Bruins history as of the last 20 years, I guess I could say. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. In the playoffs, he had 4 goals and 8 assists for 12 points in 25 games, so as I was saying, he was a big contributor to this cup-winning team. Now on the second line left wing here, we have another guy that you guys should all know, and that is Brad Marchand. This was his first full NHL season, as the year previously he only played in 20 NHL games and he spent most of his time down in the AHL. This year Brad had 21 goals and 20 assists for 41 points in 77 games. He was also a plus 25 and had 51 penalty minutes. During the playoffs, he actually broke out in a huge way, putting up 11 goals and 8 assists for 19 points in 25 games, and he was also a plus 12 and had 40 penalty minutes over that span. So Brad was originally a 3rd round pick of the Boston Bruins back in 2006, and this draft was actually a pretty crucial one in the Bruins Cup run this year, as Milan Lucic was their 2nd round pick. And then also kind of an interesting note is they drafted Phil Kessel in the 1st round, so they had a pretty deep draft. Now they did trade Phil Kessel to Toronto, and they ended up getting a 1st round pick back, which ended up being Tyler Seguin. They also got Jared Knight, who didn't really become anything, and Dougie Hamilton, who helped out Boston for a few years before he would be dealt. So kind of an interesting scenario there, and a really good draft for the Boston Bruins in 2006. Then at center here we have Brad's longtime line mate in Patrice Bergeron. In 80 games this year, the 25-year-old had 22 goals and 35 assists for 57 points. He was also a plus 20 and had 26 penalty minutes. As always, he was pretty dominant on the draw this year, winning 56.6% of his faceoffs in the regular season. And then in the playoffs, he had 6 goals and 14 assists for 20 points in 23 games. He was also a plus 15 and had 28 penalty minutes. Bergeron was a 2nd round steal in the deep 2003 NHL draft, so the Bruins had some really good drafts in the earlier 2000s that helped set them up for this cup win. Then on the right side here we have 42-year-old veteran and Hall of Famer Mark Recchi in his final NHL season. Recchi won 3 cups in his NHL career, including one with the 1991 Pittsburgh Penguins. That was in his 1st season, I think, in the NHL, or one of his 1st years. Actually, I don't think it was his 1st full season, but it was one of the 1st. And then he also won in 2006 with the Hurricanes, and in 2011 here with the Boston Bruins. Despite his age, Recchi still had 48 points in 81 regular season games, and an additional 14 points in 25 playoff games. Recchi played with a lot of teams over his career, including the Penguins on 3 different stints, which is kind of crazy. He also played with the Flyers on 2 stints. He played with Montreal, Carolina, Atlanta, Tampa, and now Boston. here. Now into the third line left wing here, we have Michael Ryder, who played 11 years in the NHL from 2003-04 to 2014-15. Ryder was actually second in Calder votes back in the 2003-04 season, falling behind Bruins goalie at the time, Andrew Raycroft. This 2010-11 NHL season, Ryder had 18 goals and 23 assists for 41 points in 79 games, and in the playoffs he'd be a huge addition with 8 goals, 9 assists for 17 points in 25 games. In the 2011 offseason, he would actually sign in Dallas as a free agent, so he would leave the team after the season. In Ryder's career, he was more of a goal scorer as he had 237 goals and 247 assists for 484 points in 806 games. He was kind of like a power forward to an extent, because he actually threw a decent amount of hits, at least in this playoff run. So yeah, that's Michael Ryder. Next at center here, we have Chris Kelly, who was acquired from the Ottawa Senators this season. Kelly was sent to the Boston Bruins for a second-round pick in 2011, which ended up becoming Shane Prince. And Shane Prince wasn't really a huge player for the Sens. He was there for a few years before he ended up going to the New York Islanders. Now, Kelly was more of a defensive forward for the majority of his career. Since the beginning of when they started keeping track of like block shots in 2007-08, Kelly blocked 425 shots in a 677 game span, so he blocked a lot of shots for a forward. He also had 311 takeaways as opposed to 202 giveaways, so he was a very good like penalty killing guy, a guy that could play respectively good in your own zone. Despite only having 5 points in 24 games with the Bruins in the regular season, Kelly helped him out this playoff run with 13 points in 25 games. Chris also went to 3 Stanley Cup Finals with only the 1 win, as he lost previously in 2007 with the Sens facing the Ducks, and then he also lost in 2013 with these Bruins against the Blackhawks, like a lot of these players did. Now on the right side here, we have 19-year-old Tyler Seguin in his first NHL season. In 74 games this year, Seguin had 11 goals and 11 helpers for 22 points. In the playoffs, he played only in 13 games with 7 points respectively. Despite having 99 points over the next 129 games in 2011-12 and 2012-13, he was dealt as a 21-year-old to the Dallas Stars in the Louis Eriksson trade, which is, I don't even understand still why Boston traded him away so early, because he actually put up some decent numbers, but for some reason they decided to move on from him. And Louis Eriksson was actually pretty good around that time period, but yeah, he eventually, when he went to Vancouver and stuff like that, he didn't pan out really that much. But I don't understand really why they got rid of Seguin, so that's kind of an interesting one. So this was his first of 3 Cup of Finals appearances, as he made it in 2013 like a lot of the players on his team, and he also just made it last year in 2020. Hopefully we could see him again in a Stanley Cup Finals with like Dallas, because like he was injured for the most of the season and he just came back from injury recently. So yeah, that's Tyler Seguin. Now onto the fourth line here, we have Daniel Paille, who was acquired actually the year prior from Buffalo for a 3rd round pick, and that 3rd round pick only became Kevin Sundahar, who I don't think was really much of anything. I think he was like an ECHL or an AHL player. I believe he still plays in one of those 2 leagues. But Paille played 43 regular season games in 2010-11 with 13 points, and in 25 playoff games he had 6 points. So he was more of a defensive forward and didn't really put up much numbers. And then Paille was actually originally a 2nd round pick of the Buffalo Sabres back in 2002, behind the formerly mentioned Keith Ballard in Vancouver, so that's kind of interesting as well. Next at center here, we have Gregory Campbell, who once played a shift with a broken leg in the 2013 Eastern Conference Finals. I actually remember watching that personally and seeing him block the shot on like TV, and it was really crazy how he just like stood out there even though he had broke his leg with that puck hitting his kneecap or wherever it hit. So pretty crazy player to an extent to play on a broken leg like that. Campbell was also an aggressive 4th liner who could fight and hit as well as kill penalties by blocking shots, as I was just mentioning, and taking away pucks. Since the NHL started keeping track, Campbell blocked 465 shots in 658 games, so pretty much like Chris Kelly did. And then he was also a crucial piece to the bottom 6 in this 2011 Cup run, as he had 4 points in 25 games with 14 block shots, 30 hits, and 9 takeaways to 3 giveaways. So he was helping out a lot defensively, and he put up some points nonetheless. Campbell was acquired in the 2010 offseason from Florida with Nathan Horton for a 1st round pick in 2010, a 3rd rounder in 2011, and defenseman and noted ref hater Dennis Weidman. And finally, to wrap up the dressed forwards for the Bruins, we have Sean Thornton, who also won a cup back in 2007 with the Anaheim Ducks. Sean was more of a grinder than a defensive player, as he had 1,103 penalty minutes in 705 career games. He also had 926 hits in 626 games from 2007-08 to 2016-17. Sean was originally a 7th round pick of the Toronto Maple Leafs back in 1997, but only ever played for their AHL affiliate before he actually made the NHL debut in 2002-03 with the Chicago Blackhawks. This 2010-11 season was Sean's best offensive respectively with 20 points in 79 games. In 18 playoff games, he had 1 assist in 24 penalty minutes. And then we get into the defensive core. We have on the top pairing German defender Dennis Seidenberg, who was originally a 6th round pick back in 2001 of the Philadelphia Flyers. Seidenberg was a really good hitter and a shot blocking defenseman with 1,471 hits and 1,417 block shots from 2007-08 to 2017-18. This was tied for Dennis's best season with 32 points, as he got that also in 2009-10. He also helped out a decent amount this postseason with 11 points in 25 games. He also blocked 72 shots and had 53 hits over that span, so he was a very crucial piece to that defensive core in the postseason. Next, we got the big man in Zdeno Chara. Chara was a free agent signing back in 2006 offseason and became the captain all the way up till last year before he signed in Washington for Boston. And what's kind of interesting about Chara was after he left the Ottawa Senators, the Ottawa Senators still made it to a Stanley Cup Finals after losing Chara, which is kind of crazy to say that. So the Sens had a very deep defensive core in like 2006, so they were allowed to let go of Chara. They didn't need him anymore, and they still went to a Cup Finals without him, which is crazy to see. Anyways, in 81 regular season games this year, Chara had 14 goals and 30 assists for 44 points. He was also a plus 33 and had 88 penalty minutes. Alongside winning the Cup, Zdeno would win the Marc Messier Leadership Award. During the playoffs, Chara had 9 points in 24 games and was a plus 16. He was originally a 3rd round choice of the New York Islanders back in 1996, so quite a long time ago, and it's kind of crazy that he actually played with the Islanders for a bit before he went on to Ottawa in a pretty big trade. Now into the second pairing here, we have veteran Thomas Kaberle, who was acquired this season from Toronto for a first that ended up becoming Rickard Rakell in Anaheim at a later date, a 2nd round pick, and Joe Colborne. Kaberle signed with the Hurricanes in the 2011 offseason, so he only played 24 regular season games with the Bruins with 9 points. In the playoffs, he would pick up 11 assists in 25 games. His last NHL season was 2012-13 with the Montreal Canadiens. Kaberle was originally drafted in the 8th round in 1996 and was actually pretty underrated, as he put up 563 points in 984 career games. Next, we got Adam McQuaid, who was in his first full NHL season as he played in 19 games in 2009-10. McQuaid was originally drafted in 2005 as a 2nd round pick by Columbus, but never played for them until like his last year of his NHL career, which is kind of crazy. In May 2007, he was dealt to Boston for a 2007 5th round pick, and that pick would eventually make its way to Dallas. And guess who that became? It became Jamie Benn. And it's pretty crazy to think that, but a random 5th round pick gets thrown out to Dallas and they get Jamie Benn out of that. Pretty crazy nonetheless. McQuaid, being a big body, would make a big impact on this team, as he was a great shutdown defenseman, and he would be a plus 30 during the regular season with 131 blocks in 102 hits. In 23 playoff games, he had 4 assists, was a plus 8, had 31 blocks and 30 hits over that span. Now onto the top 6 here, we got a player that I could respect in Andrew Ference for flipping off Habs fans, because you know I like to flip off Habs fans when they talk shit about my Sens a lot too, so shout out to Andrew Ference. Ference was acquired from Calgary with Chuck Kobasu for a 4th round pick that eventually became TJ Brody, so that's kind of interesting, as well as Wayne Primo and Brad Stewart. Ference was originally an 8th round pick of the Penguins back in 1997. Andrew was more of a physical defender who, despite his size, had 729 hits in 494 games from 2007-08 to 2015-16. Like, he was only 5'11", 182, but he threw a lot of hits for a small guy. He also blocked a lot of shots with 625 shot blocks over that span. And to wrap up the dress defenders, we have Johnny Boychuk, who a lot of Canucks fans had problems with this year because he was the one that injured Mason Raymond and took him out for Game 7. Boychuk, whose career finished actually just last season, was primarily defensively minded. In 725 career games, he was a plus 123, had 1,326 block shots and 1,475 hits. Boychuk was originally a 2nd round pick of the Colorado Avalanche back in 2002, but would only ever play 4 games for them in 2007-08. In 2010-11 regular season, he had 16 points in 69 games, and in the playoffs, he had 9 points in 25 games. Now we get into the goaltending. We got 36-year-old Tim Thomas, who literally came out of nowhere in terms of being a very good NHL goaltender. Thomas was originally a 9th round pick in 1994 by the Quebec Nordiques, and had spent a lot of time in the ECHL, AHL, IHL, and even in Finland before he would make his NHL debut in 2002-03 as a 28-year-old. This year was easily his best year, as he would go 35-11-9 with a 2 goals against average and an insane .938 save percentage. Like, he was on another level this year. He also had 9 shutouts over that span. In doing so, he would win his second Vezina in 3 years. Playoffs, he didn't slow down either, as he would win the Conn Smythe with a 16-9 record, a 1.98 goals against average, and a 940 save percentage. He would also accumulate 4 shutouts over that span. 2 of those shutouts actually came in the Stanley Cup Finals, and he only allowed 8 goals in the 7 games of this Finals, which is pretty crazy, just over a goal a game in this Finals. He was a very good shutdown goaltender, and the defensive core was really good as well at helping him out too. And his backup is the guy that took over for him in 2012-13, being former Leafs prospect Tuukka Rask. Shout out to the Leafs for trading him for Andrew Raycroft. I like to talk shit about the Leafs, so why not? As backup this year, the 23-year-old would go 11-14-2 with a 2.67 goals against average and a 918 save percentage with 2 shutouts. With Thomas being as good as he was, Rask didn't play a single playoff game this entire year, and his next time he would actually play a playoff game was in 2013 Cup run that the Bruins had, so he actually got to the Bruins to the Cup final in his first technically being first playoff run as a starting goaltender, which is pretty crazy to see that too. And Rask is no slouch, he's a very good goaltender. He is kind of slowing down a little bit, but he is still a really good goaltender right now. And now onto the depth, we have defender Shane Knighty, who was more of a physical defender who fit right in with the team. Knighty didn't really have many hits in his career, however he was still pretty aggressive with 633 penalty minutes in 550 games. This 2010-11 regular season and playoffs, he had only played in 3 games each, so he played only like a total of 6 games this year. Like Recchi, this was his final year of his NHL career. Shane also played in Ottawa, Nashville, Atlanta, Anaheim, Boston, and 2 stints, and in Minnesota. I actually met him as a kid back in the 2000s when he was a Senator. It was kind of cool. I think I actually have a photo, so I might put up a random photo of it. And finally, to wrap up the Bruins, we have Nathan Horton, who was injured in Game 3 on a dirty hit from Aaron Rome. Horton was pretty much never normal again health-wise, as he would only play another 125 NHL games. He suffered another concussion in January 2012 from a hit from Flyers' Tom Sestito, and then he would sign a 7-year contract with the Columbus Blue Jackets to start the 2013-14 season, but he had off-season shoulder surgery that would keep him out till January 2014, so he would only play in the last few months of the regular season. Then in October, he would get diagnosed with a degenerative back injury, which actually put him on long-term injured reserve, and he would never play again. His contract would be moved to Toronto for the terrible contract of David Clarkson, so they basically swapped terrible contracts. And then kind of an interesting note, Horton is actually married to Tammy Plant, who is the great niece of legendary goaltender Jacques Plante. So now that you guys have seen the rosters for both teams, let's finally get into this playoff simulation and see who comes out on top. Will it be the Canucks or will it be the Bruins? Okay, so here we are. We got Vancouver as the home team, Boston as the away team to start off this playoff run. Should be interesting to see who ends up winning, because both teams are pretty even, I would say, to the most part, except for the Canucks, who had a lot more injuries at this time, so that might be the determining factor if the Bruins win or not. If the Bruins could play good shutdown hockey and Tim Thomas could play on his game, then the Bruins could win, but Luongo could always steal the series as well for the Canucks. So let's see what happens here in Game 1 in Vancouver. Real-time simulation for the entire games, just because there's only going to be maybe a max of 7 of them, and we want to kind of take this as is and see what goals happen. As the Canucks open the scoring, Christian Ehrhoff. So there's 1 of 2 German defenders scoring. Bruins go to the power play here in this first period, and they don't score on that opportunity. But Christian Ehrhoff scoring kind of makes sense, but he was more of a playmaking defenseman, and it's going to be 1-0 Canucks after the first period. They are also out shooting the Bruins 12-7. Can the Bruins bounce back here in the second and maybe tie the game up? Power play early for the Canucks. They don't capitalize on that chance. Final 10 minutes of the second period. Power play for Boston, and they score. It's Brad Marchand, not a surprise, but Chris Higgins answers back with a power play goal, and the Canucks have restored their 1-goal lead. Interesting. And it's going to be 2-1 Canucks after 2. Shots are 24-16 in favor of the Canucks over the Bruins. It is a 1-goal game still, so Tim Thomas has been pretty good, and Luongo is playing pretty good, which makes sense. Luongo actually kind of dropped the ball a lot this playoffs. I don't know if it was the team or if it was him in general, but allowing 8 goals in 1 playoff game is a little bit concerning. So, third period, let's see what happens. Will the Canucks take game 1? Boston goes to the power play 5-on-3 opportunity, and they don't score on it. That is kind of surprising with the level of talent they have. Final few moments of Game 1 here in Vancouver. Are the Canucks going to take a 1-0 series lead? Yes, they are. They win 2-1 in Game 1. Shots were even, so Boston actually came on pretty strong in that third, 30-30 apiece. But it was a 2-1 win for the Canucks as Chris Higgins gets credited with the game-winning goal. So Ehrhoff from Malhotra and Glass. Kind of weird that Tanner Glass got an assist. So the fourth line was out there for a goal. Brad Marchand gets a goal from Bergeron. Makes sense. Happens all the time nowadays. And then Higgins from Burrows and Bieksa. 3 stars for Game 1. Luongo, Higgins, and Thomas. Interesting. That kind of makes sense. A pretty good first game for the Canucks. A pretty good defensive game for both teams. But just the Bruins could not get it done in Game 1. Let's see what happens here in Game 2. Will the Canucks continue to win games? In real life, they won the first 2 games, so it would make sense if they did so in the simulation. But you can never count the Bruins out, because the Bruins have a very good forward core and defensive core and a good goaltender, so they pretty much have everything going for them. The Canucks still battling those injuries might be concerning for them. And it's going to be scoreless after 1. The Bruins are leading in shots 12-9, so they're carrying over a little bit of momentum from the last game, it seems like. Second period underway. Who's going to open this deadlock score? Who is going to open the scoring? Halfway through the period, still no goals. Power play for the Canucks. They don't convert on that opportunity like they did last game. And are we going to the third scoreless? Yes, we are. So we're having a goaltending matchup, it seems like. Not a lot of shots, actually, for 2 periods. 17-16 in favor of the Bruins. So, yeah, it looks like the goalies aren't facing a whole lot of shots. It's just a very defensive game. Nobody's given an inch out there. Third period of Game 2. Will somebody score in this third period, or are we going to go to an overtime situation in Game 2? I mean, in real life, I think Game 2 went to overtime because Burrows had the OT winner, if I'm not mistaken, as Rich Peverly opens the scoring for the Bruins. So, the Bruins finally have a lead in this playoff run. That is interesting. And that is going to be the only goal, is the undrafted forward Rich Peverly with the only goal in the game. Final shots are 24-23 in favor of the Canucks, but the Bruins take Game 2. We have a tied series headed back to Boston. So Peverly from Krejci and Lucic is the only goal. And it seems like there was a couple fights in that game, including Rafi Torres against Gregory Campbell, which kind of makes sense. Chara versus Ehrhoff. Jesus, Chara would destroy Ehrhoff, because Ehrhoff's a lot shorter than he is. And then a couple slashing penalties to Marchand and Daniel Sedin. 3 stars in that game. Tim Thomas again gets first star, Luongo the second star, and Peverly the third. So the goaltenders have been really good to start off this Stanley Cup Finals, which makes sense. Kind of happened in real life to an extent, except for, like I said, Luongo kind of struggled when he was playing in Boston especially. And then also Game 7 too, so here we go. The series shifts to Boston. Game 3. Can Boston take advantage of this home ice that they have now? Or will the Canucks get some road wins? Which is something they did not do at all in this playoff finals. Power play for Boston. And it's a long opportunity, but they don't convert on it. No goals so far in this opening period. It looks like we're going to have another good defensive game between both teams, as the shots are 11-6 in favor of the Canucks, but nobody has scored yet. Tim Thomas keeping his team in this game. Second period underway of Game 3 in Boston, and the Canucks are going to open the scoring. It's Jeff Tambellini of all people. That's kind of weird, because Jeff Tambellini, not really a noted offensive player at all in his career. And like I said, he had a short career. And Tyler Seguin, leave it to the 19-year-old to tie it up, but Yannick Hansen's going to come right back, and the Canucks have the lead 2-1. So a pretty offensive period for the most part, and Daniel Sedin makes it 3-1 Canucks. Damn. Shots are 21-11 in favor of Vancouver as well. So Vancouver is running away with this game. The Bruins really need to get a lot more shots on goal if they want to beat Luongo, though. So Tambellini, Seguin, Hansen, and Sedin with the goals. Let's see what happens here in the third. Can the Canucks just keep on piling it on? Or will the Bruins somehow come back? I doubt they will, but who knows. Yeah, this series could probably go 7 games like in real life, but not the exact same way. Power play opportunity for the Canucks late. They don't convert on it. They're probably going to get an empty net here late, maybe. No, they are not, and they're going to win 3-1 in Game 3 on the road. So they did something they didn't do in real life. They outshot them 31-26 as well. So goals in that game: Tambellini from Torres, Sagan from Chera and Ryder, and then Hansen from Higgins and Kessler, and Daniel from Henrik, which makes a lot of sense. Let me actually see if there was any fights in this game, which there was a couple. Bieksa versus Marchand. That's kind of cool. And the rest were just minor penalties. Interesting. 3 stars in that game. Luongo once again gets first star, so Luongo's been really good so far. Hansen the second star, and Sedin the third star, as in Daniel Sedin. Okay, so the Canucks have a 2-1 series lead. Will the Bruins tie it up once again? They more than likely will, because I feel like this series has to go 7 games, but who knows. Game 4 is still in Boston. Who is going to win this game? Will the Canucks go up 3-1, or will the Bruins tie the series? As Raffi Torres opens the scoring. I mean, Raffi Torres has had some pretty good playoffs before. Alex Burrows scores to make it 2-0, so the guys that I mentioned that play a little bit on the edge, having the 2 goals here in this opening period, but a big late goal in the opening period from Rich Peverley, his second of the playoffs, make this a 1-goal game. The Bruins actually outshot the Canucks in that opening period, so not really a great opening period for Tim Thomas. 2 goals on 9 shots, and then Luongo allowing 1 goal on 12 shots. Second period, let's see if the Bruins can tie this game at 2 apiece, and Adam McQuaid is going to tie it up for them. Wow. Of all people, Adam McQuaid, who really didn't score much at all in his NHL career, scores. Okay. And there is a goal for Maxime Lapierre to give the Canucks right back the lead. Damn, this is a really close series. Like, every game seems to be like a 1 or 2 goal game. And it's going to be 3-2 Canucks going into the third period, despite the Bruins out shooting them 26-17. Can once again the Bruins tie this game up, or will they trail for the rest of this period and go down 3-1 in the series? Third period underway. Power play opportunity for Boston early. Not a good thing for the Canucks to do. Power play opportunity again for Boston, and they're going to get a goal. Milan Lucic, who, as I mentioned, had like 30 goals this year, and Lucic gets another goal on the power play. Jeez, Lucic is coming through with the clutch goals. Canucks fans wouldn't like that back in those days, because like I said, he's from Vancouver. And it's going to be a 4-3 win for the Boston Bruins as they rally back into third with, I think that's 3 unanswered goals, was it? Yeah, that was 3 unanswered goals, I think, right? Or no, actually, no, it wasn't. It was like 2 unanswered goals. But Lucic with 2 power play goals. Shots were 40-20 in favor of Boston that game. So the Canucks just kind of came close to winning because they scored on their opportunities, I guess. But once again, a 1-goal win for the Bruins. So Torres from Ehrhoff and Salo, Burrows from Henrik Sedin, Peverley from Krejci and Chera, McQuaid from Ryder and Cabriolet, Lapierre for Tanev, and then Lucic from Krejci on both goals in the third period. Was there any fights in this game? A fight between Bieksa and Marchand again, my god. I could see that happening though, Bieksa and Marchand getting into a fight. At least back in those days. Lucic gets first star with the 2 goals that won them the game. Krejci the second star with 3 assists. And Adam McQuaid with a random playoff goal. So the goaltenders weren't as good in that game. But the Bruins escape with the victory, and it's a 2-2 series headed back to Vancouver. Will the Canucks have a chance to take a 3-2 series lead? We will find out. In real life, the Canucks went up 3-2 in the series, and then the Bruins won the last 2 games, so that could happen in the simulation always. As Chris Higgins opens the scoring early, and then Jannik Hansen scores right after. It's not really that great to score 2 early goals, because usually teams bounce back after that, and 3 goals on 4 shots. Tim Thomas is probably going to get yanked in this game, which is something that never happened this playoff run either. 3 goals on 5 shots only. And yep, the Canucks are going to have a 3-1 lead actually, as Brad Marchand gets a goal with 7 seconds left. That was a pretty offensive first period. Not what I was expecting. 3 goals on 6 shots and then 1 goal on 11 shots for the Bruins. Let's see if they could start that rally back and tie this game up maybe. Or will the Canucks just continue to score on their opportunities? I don't know if Tim Thomas is still in net or not. And David Krejci gets a power play goal, but the Canucks answer right back. Jannik Hansen again. Damn, Hansen's been really good for the Canucks. And then Milan Lucic with another goal. He scored 2 last game. He makes it a 1-goal game again. Damn, both goalies are playing horrendous in this game. Shots are 19-15 in favor of the Bruins, but it is 4-3 in favor of the Canucks. 4 goals on 15 shots. Yeah, Tuukka Rask is in net now for the Bruins. So we'll see if he's actually able to escape with the victory, or is he going to get credited with the loss because of that goal. Third period underway. Will the Bruins tie it, or will the Canucks hold off and win in this game? Power play opportunity for the Bruins, and Patrice Bergeron, who had not scored yet this series, makes it a 4-4 game. Bruins on the power play again. They don't score. Yeah, they got to stop taking penalties to Canucks, because that is kind of why the Bruins are scoring right now. A lot of the Bruins have been scoring on the power play. Shots are 31-23 in favor of the Bruins. It's a 4-4 game going into this overtime period. Who is going to be the OT hero for both teams? Is it going to be Burrows, who scored multiple OT goals this playoff run? Or is it going to be somebody like, I don't know, Brad Marchand for Boston? And it's going to be Milan Lucic. My God. Lucic is killing the Canucks right now. 5-4 victory for the Bruins. Shots were 34-28 at the end of that game. But Milan Lucic with back-to-back game-winning goals. And the Bruins have the Canucks on the brink of elimination going into Game 6. So Higgins from Kessler, and then Hansen from Kessler and Higgins, Lapierre from Bieksa and Edler, Marchand from Bergeron and Recchi, Krejci from Kaberle and Bergeron, Hansen from Kessler and Edler, Lucic from Peverley and Marchand, and then Bergeron from Lucic and Krejci, and Lucic from Bergeron and Kaberle. So Lucic and Bergeron, like the big guns of the Canucks, or not the Canucks, the Bruins, are getting going a lot, it seems like right now. Let me take a look if there's any fights in that game. Yeah, there was one between Tanner Glass and Brad Marchand, so apparently Brad Marchand's fighting everybody. There was also a fight between Alberts and Thornton. Interesting. Goalie interference penalty against Raffi Torres. That kind of makes sense. A lot of penalty minutes in this series as well, so kind of realistic to the real life series, I think. 3 stars in game number 5 is going to be, are we in game 5? Yeah, game 5 is Bergeron with 4 points, then Lucic with 3 points, and Hansen with 2 goals. So, yeah, Jannik Hansen's been probably the best Canuck this playoff run so far. But the Bruins have a chance to win the Stanley Cup in Game 6 on home ice. Will they do so, or will the Canucks kind of do what the Bruins did to them in real life and win the last 2 games of the series? Could potentially happen, but Milan Lucic has been a man on the mission for the Bruins so far. So, Game 6, if the Bruins are leading with like a couple minutes left, we'll join and watch the Stanley Cup celebration for fun. If not, we will go to potentially a Game 7 situation. Then the Canucks open the scoring early, and it's Raffi Torres and then Christian Ehrhoff pretty much doing exactly what they did last game. And we know all how that ended. Hopefully that doesn't stay that way. Hopefully it stays this way with the Canucks winning this game, because I want to kind of see a Game 7 situation as Caberle is going to make it a 2-1 game, but Raffi Torres scores again to make it 3-1. Why are guys like Raffi Torres scoring so many goals? Like, I haven't seen like Henrik Sedin, I don't think, score any goals, or even Ryan Kessler score much goals. It's kind of weird. 3 goals on 8 shots for the Canucks, 1 goal on 5 shots for the Bruins. Second period underway. Looks like the Canucks are a team on a mission right now, and they want to force a Game 7. If this finishes like 8-1, that would be kind of funny, because, you know, the Bruins beat the Canucks 8-1 at one point. Not a lot of shots between both these teams again, and going into the third, the Canucks have a 2-goal lead. The shots are 19-12 as well, so they've only allowed like 6 shots a period, which is kind of crazy. Let's see what happens here in the third. Will the Canucks force a Game 7 situation? We might actually get a Game 7 like in real life. Yeah, it looks like that might be the case. Final 10 minutes of this third period of Game 6. Also, Canucks fans, if you guys lose in Game 7 in this simulation, please don't go and riot. And there we go. Daniel Sedin with the empty net goal. The Canucks are going to win 4-1 in Boston, and they force a Game 7 back on home ice. My God, this is kind of realistic to an extent. It could have went like this in real life, but instead it was like every team was winning their home games except for Game 7, where the Canucks end up losing. So Torres from Tambellini and Ehrhoff from Sedin, Caberlet from Kelly and Ryder, Torres from Edler and Lapierre, and then Daniel from Henrik. And once again, we got a couple fights in this game. Ehrhoff and Thornton. I don't know why Ehrhoff is fighting. It makes no sense. And then Chera and Tyner Glass. My God, I would watch that. Zdeno Chera fighting Tyner Glass seems like an interesting fight. And then a cross-checking major against Zdeno Chera. I wonder if he got ejected from the game because of that. 3 stars, Rafi Torres the first star, which is kind of weird. Christian Ehrhoff the second star, and Daniel Sedin the third. We are going to a Game 7 situation. Who is going to win the Stanley Cup in this Game 7? Will it be the Bruins like in real life, or will it be the Canucks? Real-time simulation again. We will join with like 5 minutes left and watch like the little bit of the third period just to see who ends up winning the Stanley Cup. Because why not? Final 10 minutes of this opening period. This might be one of those games that go to overtime. Because the last few games have been pretty offensively minded. I feel like one goaltender is going to steal this game and play good. And it so far looks like maybe Luongo might be that type of goaltender, as the Bruins are out shooting them 18-8. Luongo has kept his team in this game so far. Let's see what happens here in a second. Who is going to break the deadlock in this Game 7 situation? There is no Justin Williams, so there's no Mr. Game 7. It's Sean Thornton. Literally, Sean Thornton's going to score, and Dennis Seidenberg scores. Oh, man, I feel bad for Canucks fans if this ends like 4-0 like in real life. Oh, man. And I kind of feel bad to an extent because I wanted the Canucks to win this finals back in those days because I'm actually originally from British Columbia, so... But, yeah. 2-0 Bruins going into the third. Shots are 27-14. This might actually be 2011 all over again. We're going to real-time simulate this till the final 5 minutes, and then I'll let you guys watch. But it looks like the Bruins might escape with a Stanley Cup victory in Boston, or not in Boston, in Vancouver, like they did in real life. So we'll intervene with the final few minutes so you guys can watch them celebrate. And there's a goal from Sean Thornton again. Who would have thought Sean Thornton would have 2 goals in a Game 7 situation? So anyways, I'm going to let you guys watch this Stanley Cup Finals celebration, and I will see you guys in a bit with a little recap of all the player stats.
Boston's put in one of their most complete efforts that we have seen in quite some time, up big time late in this third. They take possession as he locks them up off the faceoff. Huge play in his own end to come up with the puck. From the right side, he goes to the middle of the neutral zone. Nothing doing on that. Scrum ensues along the boards. Pokes it away to stay on the attack. Here's a pass down low. Feeds it down low. And that one's turned away.
Luongo's done all he can. He's been terrific in goal. Now at the other end, they got to find a couple of goals.
And they can't convert on the play. Slides it quickly to Salo. Handles it along the blue line. Denies him. He got all of it. There's the whistle. Penalty coming up. They're calling slashing on the play, Ray.
Penalty of frustration in a lot of cases.
And their first chance to use the man advantage.
A criticism of their power play is that they hold the puck, they pass it around a lot, it looks great, but they never shoot it. They'll be trying to get the puck to the net more frequently.
They'll want to clear the zone here while they're trying to kill off this penalty. Moves it over to Lucic. And the final seconds ticking away here in regulation. Puck moved back to the neutral zone. Boston's looking to break out. Retrieves the puck, trying to kickstart this power play.
I'd like to see him be a little bit more direct on the entry into the zone. They haven't got set up, and as a result, they don't really have a shot yet on this power play.
And they get the puck out of harm's way. Grabs it in his own end. Quick feed to Lucic. And tries to make a diagonal pass to Bergeron. Good heads-up play in the defensive zone. Loses possession after he takes a little hit. Grabbed along the boards by Krejci. And down he goes as the puck goes free. Throws it in. Boston's got a hold of it along the wall. Puck sent over to Lucic. Have you met Lord Stanley? Well, you're about to hear, as they are about to win the most coveted prize in hockey. It is all over. Never gets tired of saying this. Your Stanley Cup champions.
What a performance. They were on this series. They were detailed. They laid out a plan, and they followed it as tightly as they could. They deserve to hoist the mug.
It is what every kid who plays hockey dreams about, winning the Stanley Cup. I can't imagine the sting, though, when you're so close and it gets away like that, Ray.
Well, I guess there's some solace in the fact that you got all the way to the final, but man, you don't get anything for it. And now you have to watch the other team hoist the cup.
You can sense that anticipation to hoist the cup, but a pretty respectful moment here, Razor.
The fact of the matter is everybody has lost way more than they've won. And so even though you're on the winning side, you know what everybody else is feeling.
Conn Smythe winner, or simply put, there's your playoff MVP.
What an outstanding tournament he's had. From the very first round all the way through, the most impactful player on this team deserves the Conn Smythe.
Well, this is the perks of being one of the leaders here. You get to collect the Stanley Cup first.
Yes, but I think the most important thing is these guys will be tied together forever. Their names will be on that trophy. They'll have reunions, and it won't be who held it first. It'll be
but
that
dibs
we
are
all
okay,
had to.
Ray. Dibs are okay.
Sure, but it's not going to matter in 10 seconds.
Oh, they get to take the tour with the championship. I can't even imagine what that feeling must be like.
What an amazing accomplishment to win, and it must be such relief to get your hands on the trophy, to realize this is it. This is what I played for.
The ceremonial team picture, I still think of Brian Trottier with the Penguins sprawled out after all those years as a veteran. Loving this.
So hard to get to.
Yeah.
He was so pumped, even though he'd won 4 other ones with the Islanders.
So there you guys have it. The Boston Bruins won the Stanley Cup 3-0 in Game 7, almost exactly the exact same as in real life because they won 4-0 in real life. But Sean Thornton coming through with 2 goals in that Game 7, pretty crazy. David Krejci takes home the Conn Smythe, which kind of makes sense because I think I said that he led the team in points. Obviously, the only reason he didn't win it in real life is because of Tim Thomas. So, but let's take a look at the player stats for this Game 7 Stanley Cup clinching games. So yeah, Thornton, Campbell had 2 points, and then Seidenberg, Ryder, and Paille all had 1 point. So it was kind of the depth of the Bruins that came up. And then Tim Thomas had the nice shutout in this game. And then for the Canucks, nobody got any offense going for them. And then their top guns were all like minuses, which is not a good thing to take. And then Luongo wasn't really on his game. Well, he actually did keep it a little bit close to an extent, but that goals against average isn't that great. Okay, so now let's take a little look at who put up stats and stuff like that, or some decent points for both teams, and then that will be it for this video. I couldn't actually script this any better almost because it's literally the exact same thing that happened in real life almost to an extent, except for who won which games. So that's really an interesting kind of simulation, I'd say. So let's start off actually with the Bruins instead of doing by both teams. So Bruins-wise, their best center, David Krejci, who won the Conn Smythe, had 6 points in those 7 games. And then Bergeron had 5 points, Peverley had 30 points. He was technically on the wing now. Campbell had 2 points, Sagan only 1 point, and Chris Kelly 1 point. Looks like the bottom 6 kind of struggled to keep pucks out of the net when they were playing the Canucks. And then left wing wise, Lucic had 6 points. He could have won the Conn Smythe easily with those 4 goals and those 2 game winning goals that he had. Marchand had 3 points. Paille had 1 point. Right wing wise, Ryder had 4 points, 4 assists, no goals. Thornton had 2 goals, which I don't understand how he scored 2 goals on 5 shots, but he did. And then Mark Recchi had 1 assist, which is kind of weird that he under-simulated that much. I don't know if it's because of age. I think I made him higher than an 83 though, so I think he probably just dropped off a little bit. Defensively, Caberlet had 4 points, Chera had 2 points, Seidenberg and McQuaid had 1 point, but Ferentz and Boychuk had no points, and I don't know why it's showing 2 Johnny Boychuks. That's weird. There must be like a glitch, because it's the exact same stats for both. Yeah, I think it's a glitch. Goaltending wise, Tim Thomas was not great, I would say, but he still played decent enough. And then Tuukka Rask, when he did play, was pretty good, because he did come in relief of Tim Thomas in that one game that I think Milan Lucic ended up winning for the Bruins, if I'm not mistaken. So that is the Bruins. Let's take a look at the Canucks. So center-wise, Kessler had no goals, which is probably the main reason they lost, because in real life he had like 41 goals in the regular season, so it kind of is a little bit sad to see him not put up any goals. Lapierre had 3 points, Henrik Sedin 3 points, only no goals as well for him, and Manny Malhotra had 1 assist, so not a lot of goals from the centers. Left wing wise, Torres and Higgins both had 4 points, Hansen and Sedin, as in Daniel, had 3 points, Burrows and Tambellini both had 2 points, and Glass had 1 point somehow. Right wing wise, Oreskovich had no points whatsoever, and why is it duplicating him again for some reason? I have no idea. So no points for Victor Oreskovich. Defensively, Christian Ehrhoff had 4 points, so he was pretty good. Edler had 3 points. Ehrhoff was actually also a +5, which is kind of surprising, because I think he was like a -13 this playoff run. Bieksa 2 points, Tanev and Salo both had 1 point, and then for some reason it's showing 4 Andrew Alberts. But Andrew Alberts had no points. And then Roberto Luongo was really good, but his team just could not get the victory in Game 7. So anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this Stanley Cup Finals rematch. So the next episode of this rematch series that I'm going to be doing is probably going to be either 2002 or 1992. So if you guys want to see any other Stanley Cup Finals from anywhere in NHL history, let me know down below in the comments. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.